Rain hammered the city in molten silver lines, turning the neon lights outside into glittering puddles. Inside Lotus Café, time slipped quietly, held between the aroma of cardamom-spiced chai and the soft hum of jazz floating from overhead speakers. Nina sat at her familiar corner by the foggy window, her calligraphy notebook open, her pen swirling careful letters across thick ivory paper. This was her sanctuary, a cocoon from the rush of the world and a palette for her dreams. Just as she lost herself in a flourish, the bell above the door chimed sharply. A man tumbled in, shaking rain from his tousled hair. He wore a camera around his neck, droplets clinging to its strap, and his eyes sparked with the wildness of 1,000 landscapes. His gaze flicked about the empty tables before settling, almost magnetically, on Nina. Without invitation, he approached. "I hope you don't mind," he said with a boyish, apologetic smile. "Everywhere else is soaked." Nina hesitated, closing her notebook protectively. "Sure," she replied, her voice soft but steady. "Lotus is weatherproof, but only if you like good tea." He grinned, pulling up a chair. "Chai, if they have it. I'm Elias." An awkward pause danced between them until Nina nodded. Nina, "And yes, they do. Best in the city, some would say." As they waited for their drinks, Elias glanced at Nina's closed notebook. "Are you an artist?" I suppose so. Calligraphy." Her cheeks warmed. She never liked explaining the gentle passion of her craft. "Could I see?" he asked, curiosity plain in his eyes. Before Nina could reply, their chai arrived, swirling steam into the air and mingling the intimate space with spice and warmth. She hesitated, but slid the notebook across the table. Elias traced her ink words with a reverence that surprised her. "Beautiful," he murmured. "Each stroke tells a story." Nina sipped her chai, examining the stranger. He looked like he belonged to distant horizons, yet, for tonight, he was folded into the quiet thrum of the cafe. "Are you always chasing storms?" she asked suddenly. He chuckled, eyes glinting. "Sometimes. Other times, I find storms find me." Outside, thunder rattled the glass. Inside, Nina felt the world shift, a tiny, thrilling tremor. Maybe, just maybe, her quiet midnight sanctuary had room for a wandering heart. After the rain softened into a whisper against the windows, Lotus Café seemed to shrink around Nina and Elias, as if the world had taken a step back to listen in. They talked in the hush of midnight, their words floating between sips of tea and the low-light glow from lanterns overhead. Nina, usually guarded, found herself letting her sentences sprawl into longer trails than she intended. "So, what do you really chase?" she asked, fingers circling her mug. "Why not settle somewhere? Few people drift through storms just for a good photo." Elias grinned, his expression a blend of mischief and longing. "Honestly, a bit of everything. Hidden temples, wild oceans. Lately, I think I chase stories more than anything. I collect memories the way others collect souvenirs." His eyes lingered on her. "And you never miss a night here. What keeps you in one place?" Nina faltered. No one had ever asked so directly. "I like the quiet," she said after a pause. "The routine makes sense, even when nothing else does. My art grows best when I have roots." Elias nodded, understanding flickering across his features. Roots and wings. That's what my mother used to say we all need. They laughed, the sound almost reckless in the gentle space. The city's energy pulsed beyond the rain-dappled glass, but inside, it was easy to imagine the world pausing just for them. The barista, an older woman with kind eyes, wiped down nearby tables and glanced at their little island of conversation with a knowing smile. "You two look like you found the remedy for sleepless nights," she quipped, placing a plate of almond cookies between them on the house. "Thank you, Selma," Nina said, the sweetness of the gesture making her cheeks flush. Elias picked up a cookie, broke it in half, and held one piece out to Nina. "To halfway moments," he said, voice soft but hopeful. "And the company that fills them." They clinked cookies, laughing at their own awkwardness. But when Nina met his eyes, she felt something flutter. A question neither was ready to ask, but both began to wonder. Outside, the storm faded, but inside Lotus Café, a new electricity lingered in the air. Nina left the cafe that night with a strange warmth in her chest. As she splashed through the puddles, she realized she was smiling. A tender, perplexing feeling she carried through her dreams and into the next day. For the first time in a long while, she looked forward to returning to Lotus. Elias was already there the following evening, elbows on the counter, exchanging travel stories with Selma. His laughter stood out above the usual clink of mugs. When he spotted Nina, his eyes lit up like he'd been waiting just for her. "Reserved your spot," he teased, pulling out her usual chair. Nina sat, heart skipping. "Careful, you'll get used to this place. Most travelers keep moving." He shrugged, mischief lingering in his smile. "I needed an anchor tonight. Hope you don't mind." She brushed a stray curl behind her ear. "Not at all." Their conversation wove easily from childhood dreams to the best cities for street art. When Elias asked about her calligraphy, Nina hesitated, then offered to show him the piece she'd been working on. A simple line in looping ink. "Every wave knows the shore." Elias studied it, his thumb tracing the air as if feeling the words. "Did you write that?" "I did. What does it mean to you?" he asked, voice low, as if the world had narrowed to this table, these words. Nina hesitated before replying. "I think we all return to something or someone, no matter how far we go." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached for his camera and turned the display toward her. It showed a crisp photograph, a vast shoreline, empty except for washed footprints and the first colors of sunrise. "This is from last year. I think I've been chasing the right shore." For a moment, they simply sat, letting the gentle jazz and the steam of their chai fill the space between them. Selma glided by, topping off their cups, humming as if she already knew the song their night had started singing. Later, as midnight crept in, Elias lingered at the door. "I'll be here tomorrow, if you're around," he said softly. Nina smiled, the answer blooming in her chest before she could say anything. "I think I will be." The storm was gone, but something else had begun, a quiet tide neither of them eager to resist. A week slipped by, each night folding into the next. Lotus Café became less a place and more a crossroads, somewhere Nina and Elias met without needing to say why. The city's rhythm thumped outside, but their own world was measured in starlit glances, tea refills, and shared laughter. On Thursday, the cafe hosted its monthly open mic night. Nina usually watched from her corner, letting the poets and musicians fill the air. This time, Elias nudged her elbow, eyes dancing. Ever thought about reading? She shook her head hastily. I prefer ink to microphones. But your words deserve to be heard. His earnestness undid her a little. Just one for me. Nina tucked her notebook closer. Maybe I'd listen if you promised to share a photo story. They stared at each other, a silent dare in their smiles. Finally, Elias stood and strode to Selma at the counter, arranging for them both to join the list. Nina's heart pounded, half in nerves, half in thrill. When her name was called, she read her line, "Every wave knows the shore," her voice twisting just above a whisper. Nina could feel Elias watching, his gaze a steadying force. The room, usually disinterested, grew quiet. When she finished, applause bubbled up, gentle, reassuring. Elias's story followed. He projected his photo, a crowded spice bazaar, sunlight slanting through canopies, faces awash with color. I took this on a hot afternoon in Jaipur, he said, weaving a story of a lost wallet, an unexpected friendship, and a borrowed bike that returned him to his hotel laughing. His words painted as vividly as his lens. Afterwards, outside the cafe, the summer air was sticky and alive. Nina looked over. You made that sound easy. He shook his head. It was easier because you went first. Nina grinned. So we're partners now in fear? Elias reached over and for the first time took her hand as they walked. More like partners in courage. Somewhere deep in the city, sirens wailed and car horns glared. But inside that touch, Nina found all the quiet bravery she'd need. Weeks blurred into an easy routine, and the cafe became a canvas for possibility. Nina and Elias tried everything. Spice cakes one night, card games another, even painting each other's portraits with crooked grins and dripping watercolors. The more they shared, the more the walls between them faded, replaced by laughter and lingering glances. One night, as the city buzzed with the promise of summer festivals, Elias slipped an envelope across the table as they sipped their chai. Nina raised an eyebrow, curiosity sparking in her eyes. "What's this?" she asked, thumbing the delicate seal. "Open it." His grin was playful, but something fragile lingered behind it. She slid out a glossy photo of a sun-drenched street in Lisbon. On the back, Elias had written, "For new adventures, with or without a map." Nina's throat tightened. "Are you leaving?" He nodded, quietly. "A magazine wants a photo series on European alleyways. It's an incredible chance, but—" Her chest ached at the pause. "But I don't want to go unless I know I can come back. Or maybe you'd come with me." Shock and excitement tangled in Nina's chest. "Go with you?" He reached across, gently threading his fingers through hers. "I know it's sudden, and I get it. Your roots are here. But I had to ask." Silence fell, but not the comfortable kind. Nina looked out at Lotus Café, so full of memories and meaning. Part of her longed for the thrill of the unknown. Another clung hard to the safety she'd built. "I need to think," she whispered. Elias nodded, squeezing her hand. "Of course, take all the time you need." Later, alone under the soft lantern lights, Nina stared at the photograph and realized that every choice held its own kind of courage. Little did she know, the summer would ask even more of her heart. Nina filled her days with ink and paper, trying to keep her mind from spinning. But every letter she drew seemed uncertain, trembling around the edges. At Lotus Café, Selma watched her with a motherly concern until one evening she finally spoke. "You used to come here to find peace, Nina. Now you look like you're losing sleep," Selma said gently, nudging a cinnamon bun toward her. Nina sighed, tracing the rim of her teacup. "I'm afraid, Selma. If I stay, will I always wonder what could have been? If I leave, will I lose myself?" Selma leaned closer, wiping her hands on her apron. "Lotus roots run deep, Nina. We bloom because we grow in the mud first. Choose what will help you bloom, not what keeps you stuck." Nina felt the words echo inside her. That night she found Elias waiting outside after closing, camera dangling from his neck, face dimly hopeful in the streetlight. "I'm sorry, Elias," she started, heart pounding loud in her chest. "I'm just torn. I want to be brave, but I'm not sure if my courage looks the same as yours." Elias reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I don't want you to do anything for me. I want you to choose what you want. But whatever you decide, I want to be a part of your story." They sat on the steps, words tumbling into the quiet night. Their dreams, their fears, how it felt to find something rare in the city of millions. Nina confessed that she'd always found safety in predictability, and Elias admitted that sometimes his wandering left him feeling lost. At last Elias said, voice barely above a whisper, "Maybe roots and wings aren't so different. Maybe we find them both in each other." Nina leaned her head onto his shoulder, and for the first time, the uncertainty started to feel a little like hope. Summer hummed through the city, and for a little while, neither of them needed to know what happened next. June lingered, thick with possibility. Lotus Café became more than a meeting place. It became a gentle ritual, their secret world between chaos and calm. Customers came and went, but Selma always kept a table tucked aside for Nina and Elias. 2 cups of chai, a plate of almond cookies, and space for their slow, winding conversation. One night, Elias arrived later than usual, cheeks flushed from sprinting through the summer rain. He dropped into the chair, brushing droplets from his camera. "You're soaked," Nina chuckled, handing him a napkin. "I couldn't miss our midnight," he said, grinning at her. "And I have something to show you." He turned the camera toward her. A new photo. Nina, hidden behind her notebook, an unruly curl escaping, smile bright and unaware. The photo radiated a quiet, unmistakable joy. Nina was stunned. "When did you take this?" "Last week," Elias replied, and his voice turned gentle. "I wanted you to see yourself through my eyes. You're brave, Nina. Even when you feel scared, that's the thing I see most." Her eyes shimmered. "I wish I could see that too." He set the camera down and leaned forward, earnest. "We can figure it out together, one step at a time. Even if that means pausing somewhere long enough for you to find solid ground," he promised. Nina's heart flipped at the admission. It was the first time Elias had offered to risk his restless ways for another. He squeezed her hand, and they sat in contented silence as the rain sang against the glass and the late-night city glowed. For the first time, a future together did not feel impossible. It felt like a question that could be answered, side by side. But as the hour drew on, Nina saw the flicker in Elias's eyes, the inescapable pull of adventure, as natural to him as breathing. And she knew, soon, the moment would come when a choice could no longer be postponed. Days melted into nights, each one threaded with anticipation and the soft tension of something unspoken. One evening, Elias arrived with a weathered rucksack by his side, and Nina understood before he said a word. His magazine assignment, Lisbon, Berlin, Paris, awaited. The time had come. Selma pretended to busy herself at the counter, casting them a discreet, supportive glance as Elias spoke. "I've booked a ticket for tomorrow," he said softly. "It's not too late to come with me." "Nina, but I'll understand if you stay. I just couldn't leave without being honest." A storm of emotions churned within Nina. The cafe, her art, the roots she'd so carefully planted, clashed with the new growth Elias had inspired within her. "What if you regret staying? What if I regret going?" He reached across, squeezing her hand. "Regret is part of any good story, but I would rather regret a leap than a lifetime of wondering." Nina pulled out her calligraphy notebook in a sudden, determined gesture. "If I come with you, I want to keep creating. I want it to be a journey, not just a pause, not just running from or to something." Elias's face lit up with hope. "We can find galleries, cafes, anywhere there's a wall. You can leave your mark, Nina." They sat quietly, letting the idea tumble into the space between them. In a way, it was her own leap, a wild trust in something she couldn't see all the way through. "I'm scared," Nina whispered, voice trembling but clear. "Me too," Elias admitted, his eyes shining. "But we can be scared together. That counts for something, doesn't it?" Nina nodded, her decision somewhere between her chest and her lips. "Let's make one last memory here tonight, in case we both need something to come back to." She glanced around Lotus Café, at Selma, the golden lanterns, the rain-dotted glass, and knew, whatever happened, this chapter would always be theirs. Together, they spent the night at their table, filling pages and memory cards, stealing glances that pledged things words couldn't touch. The city brightened outside, ready to see which path they'd choose. Morning crept in, painting the city in gold as Nina and Elias traced familiar streets, their steps slow, shoulders pressing close. The Lotus Café still glowed softly in the dawn, but its sign flickered, closing for renovations through summer. Even the city seemed to urge them onward. They wandered through the empty morning markets, their conversation marked by hesitation and hope. At the river, Nina stopped, watching the sunlight break into diamonds over the water. "I'm terrified," she breathed, hugging her notebook to her chest. "What if everything changes? What if we're not the same once we're gone?" Elias took her hand and squeezed it, gaze steady. "Everything will change. That's what journeys do. But I promise, whatever happens, it won't erase what we found." She pressed her forehead to his shoulder. "I want to leave, Elias. I want to see what the world looks like when I'm not hiding in quiet corners." "But what if the world is too big or too lonely?" He turned her gently, forcing her to meet his eyes. You won't be hiding anymore. And we'll figure out lonely together. Every city has a cafe, Nina. Every road, a place to pause. You'll still have your art. I'll still be behind my camera. Home can be something we build. For the first time, she let herself truly believe it. That afternoon, they met Selma at Lotus for their silent farewell. She gave them a hug tight enough to last the summer and slipped a small package into Nina's hand. A tin of chai blend, wrapped in a napkin covered with Selma's looping script. Come home when you need to. With the city blooming and the station lights winking like distant stars, Nina and Elias boarded their train, trembling with nerves and excitement. Nina gripped her notebook and Elias's hand, a promise unspoken between them. As the city blurred beside them, Nina watched the skyline fade. She wasn't sure where this path would lead. She only knew one thing now, something she'd once written in careful black ink. Sometimes bravery blooms at midnight, and sometimes it follows you into the daylight. But as the train rolled into summer, both Nina and Elias wondered, could two hearts write a story strong enough to survive the distance, the change, and the weight of their dreams? Just ahead, the adventure they'd imagined was waiting, and so were challenges neither could predict. The world widened with every mile. Long days became a hazy parade of unfamiliar skylines and midnight arrivals. Nights were stitched together by tiny hostels, cafe laughter, and window seats warmed by pressed-together hands. In Lisbon, Nina traced clues of her own courage in winding alleyways, charcoal sketching cityscapes while Elias captured light and motion with his camera. Sometimes fear threatened to swallow her, but both always returned to their vow, to pause, to root, to remember why they'd risked the leap. There were arguments, too, when exhaustion blurred the edges of intimacy, or when Elias grew distant, lured by a photograph that couldn't wait. But for every tear, there was a new memory. A dance under lanterns by the Seine after a thunderstorm, an impromptu gallery show in a Berlin basement, a steadying cup of chai made from Selma's blend as laughter drifted through Spanish hostels. One heavy, rain-slicked night in Paris, doubt nearly undid Nina. She stood under a canopy of twinkle lights, unsure if she belonged anywhere but the Lotus Café. Elias found her there, notebook clutched in trembling hands. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "It's all too much, too far." Elias placed his camera bag gently by her feet and enfolded her in an embrace. "When you get overwhelmed, we'll pause. And if you ever want to go home, I'll go with you. What matters isn't the city, Nina. It's us. It's this story we're writing." Slowly they walked together along the rainy street, footsteps echoing between stone and sky. Nina felt her fear, but underneath it, wonder and love. As the days passed, their differences grew into strengths. Elias learned to linger, to sit still long enough to see the colors beneath everyday sunlight. Nina grew braver, finding new corners to leave her scripted messages, each an echo of who she was and what she was becoming. Through new countries and seasons, chai and ink and memory stitched their love tighter. Sometimes homesickness bent Nina's heart back toward the Lotus Café, but she always remembered Selma's promise. Come home when you need to. One golden autumn, Years after their first midnight together, Nina and Elias returned to their city. The Lotus Café doors were open again, lanterns glowing. Selma, older but unchanged, welcomed them both with open arms and set a table for two, just by the window, where a story once began. Nina placed a fresh page on the table, her favorite pen poised just so. She didn't write an ending, only a single looping phrase. Home is a story we choose together. Elias caught her smile. Ready to add the next chapter? She laced her fingers with his, her answer sure as sunrise. Always. And so with chai, ink, and all the light of what they'd seen and survived, Nina and Elias began again, not with a farewell, but with a welcome, knowing that any midnight, anywhere, could be theirs.